Before writing a single line of praise, he lists 4 denials. It is not an accusation, it is not cynicism, it is not nostalgia, it is not politics. Not out of nostalgia for an idealized past, he writes. And he adds that he doesn't even want to risk a political battle within the church. I write these words not out of disrespect for the papal office, but out of love for that office itself. 4 denials lined up before even getting to the point. Those who take such precautions know very well what they're about to do. And in fact, what comes next, today, almost no one in the church signs with their full name. The man signing is named Rob Mutsaerts. He is auxiliary bishop of the Dutch Diocese of Den Bosch. He's not a cardinal. He doesn't lead a diocese. He doesn't have a Roman dicastery. He's the number 2 in a diocese in a country where religious practice has collapsed more than almost anywhere else in Europe. But it's a name anyone following these events knows well. His interventions have been covered for years by the international Catholic press and never go unnoticed. And above all, he is one of the very few bishops in office who puts his signature on criticisms of this kind, instead of leaving them to an anonymous high prelate. On August 13th, he published an open letter addressed to Leo XIV on his blog, in English and Dutch. The next day, Roret Cayley republished it in full. This is not a mere statement. It is a long, well-argued text, divided into chapters, which begins with an ancient principle of church law. Salus animarum suprema lex. The salvation of souls is the supreme law. Everything else begins there. My question is simple and sincere. Does the synodal process really help bring souls closer to Christ and eternal salvation? He immediately clarifies that for him, that is the crucial question. Good intentions deserve recognition. But the next sentence closes every loophole. Good intentions do not exempt us from the duty to examine the fruits. By their fruits you will know them. This is the criterion cited by Christ himself, and it is on this that Mutsaerts builds everything that follows. Those who judge the synod on synodality solely by its own objectives can easily write a positive story about it. There was listening, there was dialogue, thousands of people were consulted. Then he turns the tables. Not how many meetings were organized, he writes, not how many reports were written, not how many people attended. Has faith grown stronger? Has Christ been proclaimed more clearly? Have more people converted? Are Sunday Mass more attended? Are there more priestly vocations? When one asks these questions, it is impossible to consider the synod a success. This is the line that went around the world in 24 hours. The synodal undertaking is far from complete. The implementation phase continues through diocesan, national, and continental meetings and is due to culminate in an assembly in Rome in October 2028, and in May of this year, the Vatican published a new roadmap. What began as a synod for 2021-2024 risks becoming a permanent form of government, from instrument to system. The first notable thing is already in the name, Synod on Synodality. Traditionally, a synod was convened because the Church had to discuss something specific. Here, the object is the process itself. It could be compared to a meeting that is convened endlessly to discuss how to hold meetings from now on. It is the most frequently used image in the entire letter. The classical synod was a means. In contemporary synodal discourse, synodality risks becoming an end in itself. And that, he writes, is where the problem begins. The Church is not a conversation, it is a received reality. Because the Church does not begin with our dialogue, it begins with Christ. Christ didn't create a discussion group. He called apostles. He gave them authority. And he sent them to proclaim, baptize, and teach. Truth is not produced by consensus. Then he gives an example that leaves no room for doubt. If tomorrow 90% of Catholics no longer believed in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, Christ would no longer be truly present. The number does not change the fact. What happens when the desires of modern man clash with the gospel? The answer he gives is that it is not the gospel that must change, but man, and that in Christianity this is called conversion, a word that, he notes, is heard remarkably little in modern ecclesiastical discussions. Less evangelization, more evangelization committees, fewer vocations, more documents on vocations. And he concludes his argument. Fewer people in church, longer meetings on becoming a church. A burning house has priorities other than household chores. He lists the churches that are emptying, the parishes that are being merged, the monasteries that are disappearing, the confessional that has almost disappeared. A patient rarely gets better by taking the medicine of the patient in the next bed, who is even worse. This is the passage that the Dutch newspaper used in its headline. Mutsaerts speaks openly of the Protestantization of the Catholic concept of church, and the reference is to the Protestant churches of Western Europe. Great Catholic reforms almost never began with structures. They began with the saints. The following is a list that extends from Benedict to Teresa of Avila to John Paul II. A parish with a saintly pastor has a better future than a diocese with 20 synodality working groups and highly paid managers. Their program, he writes, was simple: to become saints. The quiet Catholic who goes to Mass every morning, recites the Rosary, and teaches catechism to his grandchildren usually doesn't write a synod report. Nor does a contemplative nun, nor a mother of 6. The world isn't waiting for yet another organization to listen to it. There are enough of those. The world, he writes, is waiting for someone to tell it what it was created for. When the world speaks with uncertainty, let Peter speak with clarity. This is the request he makes shortly before taking his leave, and underneath is his full signature: Rob Mutsaerts, Auxiliary Bishop of the Diocese of Den Bosch. The answer came the next day, and it didn't come from Rome. It came from his own bishop, Gerard de Court, in the pages of a Dutch newspaper. He hadn't been consulted, he says. A personal letter to the Pope would have been the right path if Mutsaerts truly doesn't want to sow division, as he writes. In any case, a bishop or auxiliary bishop has his own means of communicating with the Bishop of Rome. The objection is not about the content, it is about the chosen channel. And then the announcement: at the request of Pope Francis and Pope Leo XIV, the Dutch bishops will continue to build a synodal church, with a national day on October 16th in Den Bosch. The newspaper that reported the news interpreted the text in yet another way. It headlined that the auxiliary warned the Pope against Protestantization, and summarized it as a request to listen less to ordinary believers. On this point, however, the letter says something else. It doesn't ask for less listening to the faithful. It maintains that the same people are always the ones making themselves heard, and that the silent Catholic in a synodal relationship never ends. One detail remains, and it puts the whole affair back into perspective. By 2020, Mutsaerts had already resigned almost all of his administrative positions in the diocese. The reason Gloria.tv reports was precisely the disagreements with Bishop de Court, that is, with the man who 6 years later, in the newspapers, explained to him the correct way to write to the Pope. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.